Okay, so as Dave said, my name's Ashleigh. Great introduction, lots of pressure. Um, and I say I am an addict because I am used to attending NA meetings. Um, that's kind of where my recovery journey started. Um, but if we go way back to childhood, um, my earliest feelings were hope and despair. Back and forth, back and forth. I'd experience hope, and then very quickly it would turn to despair. And I had a lot of abandonment feelings growing up. My mom was an addict. My dad had sole custody of me, and I wasn't really told what was happening. So I internalized everything. I never lacked love. Like both my parents have always loved me so much. And I'll talk a bit about this later. I never really realized, until I became a mother, that love wasn't enough when it comes to addiction. But I yearned for my mom, and I thought it was, like I said, internalized it. I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. I saw my parents constantly fighting. I wasn't allowed to be with her. She would show up crying. My dad wouldn't let me go. And I didn't understand any of it. I didn't understand why I couldn't go. She loved me so much. But then there was a flip side where I would go with my mom and it was pure chaos. It was pure addiction. It was fighting. It was domestic violence. Um, I basically, with that despair was terrified. Like I lived in a lot of fear, and so that forced me to keep secrets. So I would go home from my every other Monday visit, which turned into every other weekend, and I would just isolate in my room, afraid that if I let any secrets out, I wouldn't be able to see my mom. And this continued for a very long time. And not realizing, as a child that which most of us don't. My parents were also human and dealt with things. I was, I think, 11 when I tried to tell my dad kind of what was going on, and that I was actually at a point where I was pretty scared to go with my mom. And it just, I guess, was bad timing. And I think I just felt very unheard. Was dealing with a tragic death of a friend at our property, and I just remember that being a pivotal moment. Just he was dealing with things, but I didn't realize that. So instead, I internalized it as usual that like something is wrong with me. Um, and I don't remember what age I started using, but I know that it felt, looking back, like medication. Like it felt like I was being like it was filling that void inside of not having my mom and not feeling good enough. And it kind of took all of that away. And I realized in recovery that like a lot of my using was self-medicating, it was self-soothing. Um, so I moved out at 14, basically feeling very like misunderstood. My dad was super protective of me out of love, but that kind of did the opposite. So by the time I reached teenage age where he just couldn't really deal with me anymore, everything about being with my mom was more glorified. I always like I had this freedom, and basically, was treated like an adult as a child, right? Like just she was my friend, and as I grew older, it became really confusing for me, and I didn't realize it, but like a lot of resentments were building. Especially, like I said, having my own child. I just thought like how could you have a child and not do anything you could? Like I was very closed-minded, I guess, despite being in addiction myself. So yeah, moving out, I got a job right away. I moved in with my sister. Unfortunately, like she was an alcoholic, but I saw it almost like in a glorified way. Like she could, stay up till 7 a.m. drinking and then get up for work. So she was like kind of my idol at the time. So my first job, I was, staying up late drinking and showing up hungover. Um, I don't know how I didn't lose it. I guess because I just kept showing up desperate and I was young and they wanted to give me a chance. But when I think back on my life, like there is not a job I haven't lost because of addiction, despite my best efforts to hang on to it and despite needing money. It always, and that goes with relationships too. So moving, we'll skip ahead a bit to 16, like really, really deep in alcohol, and, like, blacking out and, waking up every morning with regret, like, and embarrassment, like, it got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore, it wasn't an escape, it was like people didn't wanna be around me, it was very embarrassing, but then I would get up and do it all over again, and I ended up in detox at 17, not really understanding, like, powerlessness or, addiction or that it was a disease, just that, like, something was in control and it wasn't me. So unfortunately, that short detox, stay didn't last, and I ended up going back to my mom's and everyone was drinking, and I remember thinking, like, maybe this is just kind of the way it's supposed to be. But something inside of me, knew that it wasn't supposed to be like that. Like I knew that it wasn't where I wanted to be, but still very confused because I didn't, even in early recovery, looking back, like I never saw the choice, right? Like I just knew that like there's this feeling or there wasn't this feeling, and I tried to make this feeling, and then I was doing the same thing I didn't want to do again. Um, so around that time, around 17, I remember looking at things differently, and I remember being able to see more clearly things that were confusing as a child, like my mom's addiction. And again, kind of thinking like it was a choice, like not understanding it's a disease and all of that. So I had these like nevers, right? I will never do those hard drugs that took my mom away from me, um, ever. And like my first live-in relationship, I found out that he had done drugs with my mom behind my back, and like it ended abruptly because that was just like a no. Yeah, that's like I said, what took my mom from me. And I will say eventually I crossed all those. I will never. It wasn't who I wanted to be. It wasn't my morals. Like I crossed every line I had for myself. Um, and it wasn't long after that time that I tried, can I be drug specific or no? I just feel it helps people maybe relate more. So the alcohol and the weed like happened for a long time, right from being young. And one time I tried crystal meth, and and that was the drug that ended the relationship. And it's like I just was lost in it. I, so 17, 18, 19, it progressed. Um, it, isolated me even more from my dad and my family. I don't even know like what happened in that time. I think I still had that little voice saying like this isn't right. You shouldn't be here. But it was like a terrifying, but also like there was some relief in it. Later down the line, I found out I had ADHD, so I know for a fact a lot of that was kind of self-medicating. Um, but then things like I started to not be able to keep a job at all. Um, I It progressed. I ended up, selling drugs, and then eventually jail. Eventually, like on the run from police. It just got really bad, and I surrounded myself obviously with people who were also using. I isolated from the real world because I also felt like a deep sense of shame. Police often that looked up my whatever it's called, they look up, you didn't come from this kind of family. Like, what are you doing? And like I didn't really understand any of it myself. But I knew that I couldn't stop. And I moved to Toronto. I moved to Toronto with my sister. because it got to the point, where jail was like a relief. Like, when I went to jail, it was like a safe place. Um, one of the times I was on the run, I remember my mom picking me up because things were just so hectic and bad, like, I asked her to take me to jail because I didn't know what else to do. Um, and, Unfortunately, like, despite my, desires to be clean, getting to jail, like, it was not a clean place. Um, so I ended up, like I said, going to Toronto with my sister, and we called it Daggle Detox. Like, she's taken me and my other sister in, when things were bad, and, I ended up like, my idea was to get clean there before I turned myself in, so that when I got back out, I wouldn't use. And, I did that, and I successfully worked while on the run in Toronto at a golf course. Like, she helped me get a job, she helped me get a lot of really good support letters. I felt, like, free from it, and then, I didn't even make it, I don't think, I didn't as soon as I hit Kingston, it was, like, the same people, same crowd, same stuff, right? It's like I didn't know how to live, without it. So, I ended up, turning myself in, and, it's kind of a blur at that time, but I experienced this thing. I don't know if anyone in here has been in jail, but you get canteen in jail, which is, like, one of the only good things to look forward to. You get, like, chips and chocolate, uh, and I didn't want any of it, um, which is kind of absurd, right? So I knew something was wrong with me, and people were like, "Maybe you're pregnant." Um, and I think 60 days that I was in there, the pregnancy test, like, I just kept asking about it and it wasn't given to me, right? So, um, I knew something was different, something was going on with me. And I ended up getting out and, got all messed up again, but had this, like, brilliant idea to get a pregnancy test, and, it was positive. So I spent, 2 days, I think, like, just crying and, like, in a trap house, like, spare bedroom, just crying and just devastated and just full of fear. And, it was always a dream to be a mother. As a little girl, I wanted to be a mother, right? I always played house and, like, played with my dolls, and, like, that's most little girls' dreams. And I remember laying there and, like, promising myself that, like, I was gonna have this baby and I was gonna do whatever it took. Like, I wasn't gonna do drugs, and I was gonna do whatever it took to be the mom that I always needed. Looking back, it probably, if there was any chance I was gonna use in that time, it probably helped me stay clean, but I wasn't allowed around my child unsupervised. I had to basically go move in with my dad, which I was willing to sacrifice anything. Like, this was my whole world now. I made that promise to her. Um, so we ended up the next November, we were home by then. And it was like a long road with CAS, and, it built up, like, a lot of guilt and shame, but I also had a very, like, sheer determination to, like, prove them wrong and to, prove that the way that I felt and cared for my child was legit. Um, so it was a very rocky road with her dad, and, both being addicts and both, yeah, it was just very volatile. And, eventually I had to cut things off, like, no contact, which was in line with what CAS wanted also. Um, and then At this time, getting back home and adjusted, I started having drinks again. I remember, the first night that I went out, she would go to my dad's every other weekend, and I would let loose. And again, like, my brain tricked itself, like, oh, it's not a disease, whatever, I can control it. And that happened for quite a while. She was almost a year old, and I went into college. Like, I wanted to give her a future. I went into a course that in active addiction previously I tried to complete, and there was no way. Another thing that, like, was lost to addiction. But I did really well. I graduated. I graduated like at the top of my class, and I was able to like have beers while I studied sometimes. I get a six pack and like very in control. So I thought, but the one thing that I've learned about addiction is like when I use, it doesn't matter if it takes like a day or hours or a year, like eventually it's going to lead to me having absolutely no control again. And it comes first over everything, despite how I feel or my efforts. Um, so to make a long story shorter, it progressed, and that one drug that I never thought I would do anymore, it took one night out drinking when my daughter I knew was safe at my dad's, and I did it that one time, and then, it progressed to me doing it just, almost every weekend she was there and somehow, like, controlling it to just that, and, my beliefs, like, I will never do it. I even judged other parents that did drugs when their kids were home, as crazy as that sounds, because I would never do that. And then it took hold, and eventually, I was doing it when she was in bed, and then doing it when she was home, and then I was just trying to function. And It was terrifying. I eventually had my dad come, and I was with my partner at the time, and he, you know, unbeknownst to me, knew what was up. There were signs because there's always signs, and he basically took my daughter, and I was able to get clean again. Um, and from the time she was like a baby to okay, so college, let's say she was about 2 when I graduated. From 2 until 6, it was like a struggle. I didn't know there was help. I thought that, like, if anyone knew about my addiction, she'd just be taken from me. I was scared of the police, of the CAS because of my past experience, um, and, like, literally, I just wanted to be her mom. So I tried really hard to function. There was a period of time where I think it started in college, just the opiates, um, and it seemed very manageable until I tried a different kind of opiates that was a little cheaper, and so then I used crystal meth to get off of the opiates, and then I'd end up on the crystal meth, and it was brutal, all while trying to be her mom, and I got a very good job out of college. At the college, and I became an office manager, and I don't know how I managed for the length of time that I did, but with methadone and Suboxone, like I was able to, for periods, like function and work. But like I said, every job was lost. I eventually, the meth addiction got so bad that I lost that job too. And I will say that after getting clean from meth, I really believed I would never do it again, ever. And then the opiate addiction felt so hopeless, like I had no idea how to get off of opiates. And that's been a pattern throughout my life, like using one thing to get off of another and getting stuck on that and then stuck in the insanity. Um, yeah, so um, flash forward to being like completely suicidal. Um, she's 6. I had moved out of housing, to an apartment, had a good job, ended up back in housing, um, and yeah, just lost, hopeless. All I wanted to do was be her mom. Like that's all I wanted to do. And I had convinced myself at this time, because my addiction was so deep and dark, that I didn't want to live anymore. Like if I couldn't be clean and be her mom, like there was no hope. Like she is way better off with someone else. And it obviously is me. I'm the problem. I am a piece of shit. For whatever reason, there's something in my brain that I just can't put her first. Um, and it was a really hard realization. But I prayed and dropped to my knees for the first time ever. And I've had a few relapses, like after my brain kind of mushes it up. So that was kind of the second one. Hopefully you're bearing with me here. The first time though was a CAS card in my door. Terrified of CAS, but also like relieved because I'm like, okay, like now I have to do something. In my addiction, I've only ever been able to get out of it when I'm like forced or jolted. Um, so basically, my daughter was apprehended. I had to go to her school. I had to tell her she wasn't coming home. She was going with grandma and grandpa while mommy got better. I used right up until I went to treatment. Um, I was very fortunate that my dad was able to take her. So I knew that she was there, but it was like devastating. I would call from treatment. She was 6 years old and she would just bawl her eyes out. I miss you, mommy. I need you. I managed to stay in treatment. I managed to like get that time of healing, that safe place. Um, and I ended up getting out and getting her back in record time, like through a lot of hard work. A lot of, I was very fortunate that this time the CAS worker, basically, I knew I had no choice but to be honest, right? Like, even if I was terrified, I had to just be honest. And I think that was my first experience with hope. Um, despair is, I think, like the opposite of hope, right? It's where like you don't have any hope. And I had lived that way for so long. And I just had hope that like if I was just honest, things would work out. And thankfully they did. Thankfully, this worker was like, invested in the outcome and in helping. And I was honest about things that terrified me. Um, and like I said, got her back in record time. I did every program possible, every group, every parenting class, everything. And I finally felt like I beat it, so to speak. And it was like a month later, and I forgot all about that or something. Like I forgot how much I just wanted to be her mom. And one time I used, um, and I think it was like a month after, and again went right into secrecy, isolation, shame. Like, how the fuck could I do this? I'm going to lose her for life. And then that was when I became very suicidal. Like, what is wrong with you? You just got her back. Like, they're not going to give you more chances. No one's ever going to believe that you want to be clean. Um, and I ended up, I think at that time having to like, well, I ended up, I had been to one NA meeting, and I was kind of scared of NA. I thought it was like very religious, and but I literally had no other options. And I knew some people who it had worked for them, and luckily they, were friends from before, and I got taken to an NA meeting, and I felt a lot of hope in that room. Like I saw a lot of people who I knew used, but they weren't using anymore. And so that, so I'm gonna go flash forward a bit to now, like recovery. Um, I dove into like the NA program, and I dove into outside supports. Like I had a they called it Thrive then, an AMHS worker. I did a lot of classes at AMHS for addiction. I like try to learn all about addiction. Um, and the biggest thing that kept me clean when I think back is remembering how many times I used one drug to get off another, how many times I would have done anything for 2 days clean. Like if I get a couple days clean, I can fucking do this. But it was remembering that like every single time I got into a place I couldn't get out of. Like it thankfully was enough having that card in my door. But I realize now that like it very well could have not been enough, right? Because addiction is so powerful. Um, so that, kind of healthy fear and also, yeah, just knowing that, like the first part of my recovery, it was just my daughter that I held on for, right? She was my reason. And like they told me in treatment, like eventually that it was fine in the beginning, whatever could get me clean, but eventually it would have to be more than that. Like she couldn't keep me clean. Um, and I would have to do it for myself. And I wasn't really used to, doing anything for myself. Um, but over time, I, I started off with like it's Chloe's mom. Like I had to be good to Chloe's mom. And I basically, had to had to relearn feeling safe and not feeling despair and not feeling fear at every moment. And going from, active addiction and like addiction throughout my life, where I felt like I always needed more. Like if I was drinking, I would have to drink until there was none left. If I was using, like I just took everything too far. So in recovery, learning what my new baseline was a struggle, but I surrounded myself with people on the same journey. And that's how I got through it. And asking for help. Like there is something so courageous in asking for help. And what we call surrendering, and knowing that I couldn't overpower addiction. Um, so I basically, through NA, took a lot of suggestions, through counseling, took a lot of suggestions. Um, and and things just kind of started to happen, from that first time with CAS, where I had a bit of hope that if I was just honest, things would work out. That sort of happened. Um, and I had a lot happen in my first year of recovery. At 9 months clean, my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and it was terrifying. And if I hadn't have been clean, like I don't even know if she would be alive to this day. Like I don't know if we would have made it to the doctors. Um, but again, I asked for help, and the main thing too, like taking it one day at a time. Like I had to take life one day at a time. So um, all of these things, all of these dreams that I had, and that I thought I could accomplish, started to come true. Like when I was honest and I had hope and I put the work into myself, and um, I listened to other recovering addicts, and yeah, like I said, took a lot of suggestions. And today, I can gratefully say that like I was able to get a record suspension, which even, I was hesitant to do it because I think I had reservations about still being in active addiction. And yeah, like you can probably only get one, right? Um, so I thought I better wait just in case. But I did that, and the process of it alone, is daunting. And so all of the things like that that I've accomplished have kind of fueled my recovery. Um, Getting a little sidetracked in my brain. Sorry. Um, yeah, was that Dave? What did you say? Record suspension. Okay. So all of these things that I really didn't think were possible, I was able to accomplish in recovery. And in NA, I know this isn't NA here, but in NA, they have this promise, and only one promise, that you'll be free from active addiction. Um, and I feel that's kind of universal in recovery, right? Like if you do the things you need to do to recover, but the one thing that you may not realize is that life will still fucking happen. You're still going to feel despair. You're still going to feel fear. People are going to die. I lost my brother to suicide when I was almost 2 years clean. This happened with my daughter, and then celiac disease. I went through family court. I was served in an NA meeting. All these things still happen, but because I chose recovery and I chose to put the work into myself, and I chose, hope that just kept kind of moving. Every time I had hope and then it didn't turn into despair, like when I was younger, it like fueled more hope. So today I have this unwavering faith that like even if shit is hard and painful, and I want to isolate and I want to run, even if like something happens to my daughter, like life happens, but it will be okay. Like no matter what, even when it sucks and I don't like it and it's not what I want, like everything will work out because I've felt that, I've lived it, I've seen it like in other people. And I'm not a religious person. Some would say that's God, right? Today, my higher power is the opposite of my addiction. It's like the essence of my grandma. It's like who I always knew I was supposed to be. It's all the principles that are opposite of addiction. It's love. It's grace. It's the opposite of fear. And I try to like I like to think that is that little voice I always had inside, trying to like peek through my addiction. Um, and yeah, I guess the most powerful thing of all for recovery and for not going back and not, making that choice because I have a choice today. Like I could use, then it's gone. No choice. Everything's gone. Everything in my life is gone. And I've built up a pretty beautiful life in recovery, thanks to recovery and only being in recovery and only being in NA. And like I'm a business owner now. My daughter's 17, and despite fear through her whole life of her being an addict, she's not like she is probably maybe with other things, but I mean she's had a mother in recovery, and the biggest gift I can see is that my recovery and the work on myself has like literally rippled down to her. Like I can see her using recovery in her life with people. I can see that like she doesn't feel I basically showed up for her in ways that I would have needed, right? Um, and I've used all the tools with her, and like not to say I've been perfect, but I've been real. And I think that's one thing too that is very important in recovery, like showing up real and showing up where you're at, not pretending you're okay when you're not, asking for help when you need it. And I feel like she's someone, and I know this isn't all thanks to me or anything, but she's someone who doesn't seemingly feel like she needs to escape from life or she needs to hide or she's not protected. Um, and that is an amazing feeling and like more than I could have ever wished for. Yeah, I don't really know what can help me out. What else should I say? I wanted to touch on like just the fact that that promise, free from active addiction, like that's all I wanted at one point. That's all I wanted. I wanted to be a mom. Um, and I also wanted to touch quickly on my mom, my resentment with my mom, because it got really deep even when I got in recovery. Like, I'm doing it. How could you not do it? And through, hearing other mothers and through my own experience of being an addict and realize, wow, I'm her. Like I am literally her. And I had no comprehension for what my parents went through. Like, how did my dad feel? Like my mom had a child at 15. Like, what needs of hers weren't met? What fear did she hold? Like, and I know and have a belief now that our parents do the best that they can. And sometimes it's shitty, but sometimes that's their best. And, I think once realizing and humbling myself to the fact that I'm an addict, that really released my mom from my resentments. And I could see her as, you know, an addict and an imperfect human and realize that like it was never me that wasn't loved. It was never me that wasn't good enough. It was just, human addicts trying to do the best they could and trying to stay alive themselves. And I don't know, I hope that kind of makes sense. I feel like I didn't really touch on the now and the gratitude, but that promise, like I said, being free from active addiction, like I have been gifted so much more by staying clean. And it's been really hard. Like I've struggled with gambling to numb out and escape. Like I've had some really hard things happen in recovery and some really awful things, but I've also been connected to people in recovery that show up for me and there is a whole a whole world of us warriors, us recovering addicts, and my story's filled with a lot of relapse and a lot of like testing it 'cause I'm very strong-willed, and I thought it was just a choice and blah blah blah. But like when it comes down to it, like all that matters is that you keep hope, right? That you have that spark of hope still, because a lot of us die once we lose that, and a lot of us die with that one choice. But you just keep coming back to hope, then like anything is possible. And yeah,